And we're gonna, speaking of which, you're gonna be presenting today. You're gonna be the band today.
Yeah, right now.
Not yet. Okay. Now, notes opened up, I hope. Here's where we at. Now, here's where we at. Here's where we at. Here's where we are at. Now, that said, you said you read the book, Pete? Anybody read the book, Pete? Which is fine. Now, if you read it twice, I recommend maybe read a different book, but we're going to be dissecting in more depth, so you kind of see some things. So, that's fine. You've already read it. Maybe I get you a different book. Now, again, we'll discuss. Maybe read it for the third time. Read it the first time, so we can have a conversation. Now, looking up here. I hope you know by now, Chloe, that history is all about what?
Choices. Butterfly.
Choices? Causation. Thank you.
Geography.
Causation. Cause and effect. And yes, geography is always looming in the background. Okay? It's always looming in the background. Now, we can connect everything in history if we really want to. We connect most things in history. We look, for example, here are these 2 dates. What happened here? Just quick refresher. What book was written? Wealth of Nations. Who wrote it, Cam? What's the guy's name? Another guy, yep. Adam who?
John. No,
Adam Smith. Okay, he wrote a book about capitalism. 1848. Karl Marx wrote that, talking about what? Communism. Now we have Smith, we have Marx, we have laissez-faire. Smith argued laissez-faire, which means what?
Lazy government.
Lazy government. Government's hands off when it comes to business. That's what that means. Okay? Which will be the opposite of what communism is all about. Now, where did Karl Marx write the Communist Manifesto? Not in Russia. In England. Where does the Industrial Revolution start? In England. Causation. When Karl Marx walked out in the streets of London, this is what he saw. Hence, he writes a book about communism. What's the main idea of communism? Equality. Okay? These people need to lift them. These people need to do what? To lift themselves up.
Break their chains.
Break their chains. They need to unite. Okay? So we see that this is going to be a byproduct of the Industrial Revolution. We see the Industrial Revolution is going to create this society that we know for communism. Now, Karl Marx sees people living and dying in the name of profit. He wants to change that. He has a kind of utopian dream. That utopian dream in the end will be remembered for this. Synonymous with death. What kind of government? Totalitarian governments. Okay? Now, Karl Marx dies. The ideas are planted. It hibernates. And this guy's going to bring Marx's ideas alive, which is Henry Lenin. Okay? And we have these 2 quotes we looked at before the break. War is the midwife of revolution. What war is this talking about? World War I. Okay? And why will there be a revolution in Russia as a result of World War I? They won out of the war. Why? They're dying at a rapid rate, and their people at home are what? They're starving. Okay? So we see a perfect kind of mix for brew for revolution in Russia. Okay? So we talked about these things. Now, the revolution is coming to Russia as a result of World War I, as a result of starvation. Okay? And we see there's going to be a revolution. Here's the pie chart we looked at. It's going to revolt and overthrow this family. Who's this family? The Romanovs. What's that guy's name? Nicholas II, the Tsar. Okay? So we have, as a result, we have this revolution. What was the first revolution called? The Russian Revolution, which will overthrow the Tsar. Okay? And who comes into power as a result of the Russian Revolution? The temporary government. What's it called? The provisional government. Very good. The provisional government, what mistake did they make?
They go back to the war.
They don't pull out of the war, okay? Which is going to open the doors for another revolution. We're going to have Germans sneak this guy and his wife and about 30 of his closest friends collaborate into Russia, and they're going to start another revolution. What's the second revolution called?
Bolshevik.
The Bolshevik. Sounds like a bad word because it was in America. Okay, the Bolshevik Revolution, okay, is going to overthrow that provisional government. And this guy's going to take power. Who is that guy? Lenin. He's going to offer 3 things: land, peace, and bread to the Russian people. Okay, the Bolsheviks will. But he does not get power right away. He has to fight for it. But he is going to pull Russia out of the war. What's that treaty called he has to sign? The they can dress, the Tops Treaty, okay, is going to pull Russia out of World War I, and they're going to have to give up a lot of what to do so? Land, okay? Are they going to get that land back eventually?
Yeah.
Plus some. Yes, they will, plus some after the next war. Now, the reason why he gets him out of the war is because A, the Russians are dying, but B, he needs to consolidate his power. There's a power vacuum whenever he goes to Tsar. What follows the Bolshevik Revolution? A Russian Civil War. The Reds versus who?
Whites.
The Whites. The Reds are who?
Stalin.
The Soviets. The Bolsheviks. Stalin's one of the Bolsheviks. He's not a main player yet. Okay, but Lenin, yes. And we have the Bolsheviks versus the Whites, which are more the capitalists and old guard. Who wins the Civil War? The Reds. Okay. Who helped support the Whites? The United States and Great Britain will not be forgotten by who? The Soviets. Okay. So we have the Russian Civil War breaks out. We know that the family is in Yekaterinburg. Okay, and they're going to be asked to go to the basement. They'll be shot and killed. Now we see the Reds win the Russian Civil War, and we see Russia go from Russia to the Soviet Union. We see the creation of the Soviet Union as a result. Now, Lenin does not stay in power long because he what? He croaks, and then he's going to warn everybody around him, be careful of this guy. If he gets power, he's very dangerous. You don't get rid of him, you guys. He croaks. Nobody takes him seriously. Nobody takes him seriously. You can kind of do things. Nobody pays attention to him. These are disappearing. Okay? So we see this guy, that guy takes power by 1929.
Breaks the animal's leg.
Breaks the cat's legs, yes. Who is this guy? Stalin. Okay? Now, we must understand something. Stalin's going to set up a totalitarian government in the Soviet Union. This is important. Which means this guy has total power. This guy's at the start of the Cold War for the Soviets. So if you understand this guy, in his own mind, you understand what the Soviets' perspective is, because the Soviet Union thinks through this guy's brain, okay? Because this is the head of the snake right here, okay? So we're looking here at Joseph Stalin. If we kind of have an understanding of that, we understand what motivates the Soviet Union during the Cold War, at least early on. He'll die about 8 years into it, but he's around at the start. He's a starter. He kind of creates this bad boy. Now, we need to make sure we look at the Cold War as a chessboard. We have two different sides, we have two different perspectives viewing the same chessboard. The chessboard represents the world. We have two different viewpoints of looking at it, different vantage points. One sees capitalism, another one sees communism. One sees democracy, other one sees totalitarian communism. Okay, command economy, command government, fully controlled by the government. We see individual versus collective good. We have two different ideas out of how the world should be shaped. Does that make sense, everybody? This is really Ruth Pro. Now, we're going to watch a video. I'm going to put it at 1.5 speed so we can get through it, so we can get to the new information. So this is kind of going to reinforce and introduce some new things. So bear with me. It'll be about,
Hello, David. How you doing?
Doing well.
it's from the Khan Academy.
Learn about this thing we call the Cold War. What is the Cold War? What makes it different than
So a Cold War, and in this case, it's really, it might be a term that we would debate, is a war where the two major combatants never actually fire bullets at each other or drop bombs on each other. So never in the course of the Cold War did the U.S. ever meet the ground troops with the USSR.
But people still die in combat.
Right.
Okay.
So the Cold War is kind of fought through proxy wars. These are wars that are taking place in other nations, developing nations of the world, where
You should know what a proxy war is. We studied one. Who did America support in the 1980s to kill Soviets? Afghanistan. Remember that group, that organization's name? Mujahideen. Very good.
the U.S. is supporting one side, that would be the pro-capitalist side, and the Soviet Union is supporting the other side, the communist side. So this is the case in the Korean War in the 1950s, and then definitely the case in the Vietnam War in the 1960s.
So the U.S. and the USSR aren't fighting directly, they're betting on boxing matches, betting on different fighters in boxing matches.
Yeah, but they're not just betting, they're also putting money and arms in their mouths. So there are two different fighters in the ring. The U.S. is giving the capitalist fighter, is beating him.
So you've got a capitalist fighter in one corner, and he's sweaty and he's beaten, but the U.S. is behind him with like a towel and like water bucket, splash water in his face, like, get in there, Sponge, get in there.
Right, and if necessary, tie him with boxing gloves, or give him a pair of shoes, and doing whatever they can.
Hanging his rent.
Right, doing everything that they
Finding
can.
heels, probably, that's the
Yes,
most.
exactly.
Okay, so tell me about these two pets. This pet is called wearing a suit.
Is Harry Truman. And Harry Truman is president of the United States, starting in 1945.
Okay. I want you guys to jot that down. We're going to be talking about Truman. we need to understand something. You be conscious of this. Americans don't hate the Soviets. The Soviet people don't hate the American citizens. It's the leaders that make the decisions that lead each side to hate each other. It's the decisions made by the leaders following World War II that will lead us on this collision course we call the Cold War. And you're looking at the two main players from each side to start. You have Harry Truman on the left, the boxer on the left he mentions in the suit. Okay? Harry Truman replaces FDR. The decisions he makes is going to foster that distrust, that hatred. It's going to fuel that kind of that lack of communication. We don't trust him. He doesn't trust us. Now, Truman was known to say some things. I'll give you an example. Truman, when the Nazis invade Russia during World War II, Truman makes a comment to the New York Times as a senator. What we should do is we should let them kill each other. And if we see one side taking advantage over the other, we should help the weaker side, and they should help them kill the other. If they get too strong, we should just let them kill one another, all these Nazis and communists. That's Truman's comment about what's going on in Russia and Germany. Okay? So we look at this. If you hear that comment in Russia, and this guy becomes a president, you're like, man, I don't trust that dude. He wanted all of our people to die. Okay? So we look at this is going to foster this mistrust. And we have the other guy who says something in the 1920s talking about how communism is going to take over the world. You get worried about him. So we must understand these two are at the forefront of the start of the Cold War. By the way, according to this video, when do they argue the Cold War starts? 47. Again, that's a moving target. Again, that's why you guys do an argumentative essay. There's no definitive starting point. Now, who has something that happened in 1947 as a starting date? Anybody? 47. Coop, what do you have? Marshall Plan? Truman Doctrine. Good. Who has Marshall Plan? Boom. So you guys are looking at, this is, according to them, the starting date. It's probably looking at those two.
Was vice president to Franklin Roosevelt, who had been U.S. president since 1932, and who tragically died in 1945. So Truman is really in charge of ending World War II for the United States and also kind of setting a post-war plan.
So he prosecutes the end of the war. He makes the decision to drop the atom bomb on the side of the Hiroshima, and he ends the war in both of them. And in the other corner, wearing a very fine mustache,
is Joseph Stalin. He's the Soviet premier. He's been in charge since the 1920s. And for him, I would say the most important thing that Stalin wanted after World War II was security, I would say. So you remember your history. In World War I, Germany invaded Russia. In World War II, Germany invaded Russia.
Okay, we're not talking about anything new. We've talked about this at the beginning of the year with geography. Russia, what's happened to Russia for centuries? It's been invaded. It's been invaded by the Mongols, Germany twice, Napoleon, Charles XII from Sweden. So they're naturally, as a result of all these invasions, all these millions of Russians being killed by foreigners, they're naturally insecure. What's somebody insecure want? They want security. They want protection. Okay, they want to get over that anxiety. So what's the best way to do it? Well, Stalin has an idea how to get security.
And if there's anything that Stalin wants in the post-1945 era, it is not to be invaded by Germany anymore.
So, and I'm stopping this paragraph, guys, to make sure we're reinforcing this point. Stalin, you guys are getting Stalin's perspective, which now you have the Soviet Union's perspective on the Cold War. They want security. What's that mean? Let me ask this question. What do you think a first step would be? Who's invaded them twice in the last 20, 30 years? Germany. What do you think they want with Germany? They want them what? They want them gone. They want them taken over. They want them weak. A weak person can't hurt you. Right? So let's keep them weak. The United States, again, it's chessboard. We're seeing a different perspective. We don't want a weak Germany. We want a strong Germany because a strong Germany is on the border of what curtain? And we don't want that Iron Curtain to expand. So we want a strong Germany that will be able to resist that Iron Curtain from moving into its territory. So again, butting heads over Germany in the post-war plans. So again, the world is, you get two different angles on what to do with it. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. What do I do? Thank you.
So he is very anxious to make sure that the world is safe for communism. He thinks that the best way to make sure that Russians can continue the experiment and revolution of communism is to have a buffer zone, shall we say, between Russia and the rest of Europe.
Okay.
And
What are those states called in the buffer zone? Satellite states. Very good. Or satellite states. Those are the satellite states.
he does that by kind of shoring up some public governments in what we now call the Eastern Bloc, these nations that had been taken over by Hitler, and then when the Soviet Union joined the war on the side of Allies, then were retaken over by Russia as they fought Hitler back.
So a lot of those Central European countries like Hungary and Lithuania and the former Czechoslovakia,
Right.
Yugoslavia.
And he has the advantage of having boots on the ground there, right? Because he'd beaten back Hitler's invasion. Eventually, right, Russian troops were fighting against Hitler, and American troops were fighting against Hitler. They meet in Berlin at the fall of Hitler and kind of shake hands in Berlin. But the advantage that Russia has is they've got a lot more people here. They've got most of Europe now, at least east of Berlin, has Soviet troops on the ground.
Sure. So you've been telling me that the Soviet Union did yeoman's work in containing and basically prosecuting the entire Eastern Front during World War II.
Yeah, and the Soviet Union actually lost 20 million people during World War II. That's, just a ludicrous number. They lost more than anyone except for China and Germany. So I feel like they feel like they have a real stake in the outcome of World War II.
So at the end of this, what is the situation in this on? Like, they conquered all of this territory, but are they strong enough economically to hold all of it and feed everyone?
No, not really. In fact, most of Europe is in pretty dire straits. Think about it. All of World War II was really kind of fought, right?
Right in the European red line.
And so there is serious economic trouble in the aftermath of World War II. People don't have enough to eat. They certainly don't have cash. And they don't have any fuel, which is very worrisome in 1946 because that's a terrible winter.
Okay, now it's going to get into this. I want to make sure we're clear on this. We know capitalism is the why. Where we have inequality. We have the rich, we have the poor. Anywhere and everybody in between. Communism is all about what? Everybody's supposed to be equal. Okay? Now, who would this communism appeal to? The poor. Because what's it going to do? Maybe lift them up for equality. So we must understand this concept. So we must understand as capitalists, we need to make sure we do what with the poor? Try to do what? Try to lift them up. This is where food stamps, this is where we have government assistance. We're going to help these people survive. Because if we don't help them survive, they may turn to what? Communism. Now you guys must understand this. At the end of World War II, this continent is in bad shape. There's a lot of these people who are poor. When I say poor, it doesn't just mean you don't have much. It means you're hungry. When you're struggling to survive, you turn to your government. When you're afraid, you turn to your government. And when we're afraid, we tend to give the government more power. So what's America want to do to Europe following World War II? They're poor and they're hungry. Help them. We're going to give them a lot of money. We're giving them a lot of aid. That's what the Marshall Plan's all about, Cam. Okay? Helping lift these people up. Because if we don't lift them up, what may this blue color become what? It may turn to red. Because they may turn to communism. So this is a big idea in 1947.
So people are cold and they are hungry. And when people are cold and hungry, there is a lot of fuel for a constant revolution, right? Even in the 1930s, right, in the United States, there's a lot of different political ideas that come up during the Great Depression because when your political system isn't working well, you consider other kinds of political systems.
So the United States is worried that because of the cold winter and scarcity of Western Europe, this blue part of that is going to turn much better.
Right, so for the United States, they're worried that communism is kind of the child of hunger and poverty. And they're afraid that because Stalin has so much territory in Europe, that he is really well poised to become Hitler Part 2.
That's important. We look at Stalin as Hitler Part 2, 2.0.
It's that appeasement doesn't work in Europe, right? During the 1930s, many people in the West,
I want you to write down that word appeasement as well. Kyler will be talking about that.
England, Neville Chamberlain, kind of felt like they didn't want to go back to war, right? World War I is still very much in people's minds in the 1930s. And so they figured, let's not confront Hitler head on because, we're not up for that right now. We're also in the middle of a worldwide depression. And that helped nothing because it just meant that Hitler could gain a whole lot of territory, and World War II was much worse than it might have been if they hadn't gone after Hitler earlier.
Stop the Anschluss.
Yes.
You stop the Anschluss, you stop the Anschlag.
Exactly. So they're really trying to say, all right, Stalin, if he wants to, could probably just run his way through the rest of Europe, right, with very little resistance, because the only nation in the world that has military and economic power to stop the Soviet Union is the United States.
Because they're factory. Fuel's not on the center.
Right. So if they want to stop Hitler Part 2, the Stalin years, right, then they're going to have to really stand up for capitalism and also for kind of material comforts and democratic, what we call self-determination. Right, this is one of the most important ideas coming out of the alliance between the United States and Britain, which is that the citizens of the region should have the right to decide their own form of government. And they think of the Soviets as being totalitarians, and that's not a wrong assessment, because there's a very strong totalitarian pull coming out of Moscow and the Soviet Union. So they say, if we're going to keep Europe from turning all red, all communist, then we're going to need to kind of shore up Europe.
Okay.
Now they think of communism as kind of being a little bit like a flood, shall we say? That you gotta put sandbags around the edges of communism, otherwise it's gonna leak out.
So the United States and their allies also interested in creating their own kind of likely buffer zone, also next to the Eastern Bloc. Or are they interested in, is this when we get to the creation of NATO?
NATO really comes out of an understanding that World War II is not creating peace.
Okay.
And so the US is going to have to forego their more than a century-long commitment to being isolationist and take a stronger role in the world.
So for the folks at home, what does NATO stand for?
It's North Atlantic Treaty Organization. This is a defensive alliance between, at first, 12 nations, which say that an attack on one is to be treated as an attack on all.
Gotcha. Well, that sounds like they're maneuvering their oxygen position. Rubbing shoulders, getting ready.
Yes, very much so. And I think one of the tragedies of the post-war era is that maybe things didn't have to be like this.
It's an important question. That's a fascinating question. Was the Cold War inevitable? Could it not be stopped? Was it something that was going to happen regardless of what any decisions that were made? Okay, that's a question historians have tackled. I know it's a what if, which I think are the most entertaining questions in history. What if this had happened instead of that? But we can look back and we can try to learn from mistakes that were made by Truman and Stalin at the start of this thing.
Right, after the US and USSR had worked together with each other, it might have been possible for them to coexist peacefully. But I think they both had the idea that the other economic system, we're talking about communism and capitalism, which is kind of riddled with internal inconsistencies, and that eventually the world would be all capitalist or all communist. And they were going to have to really marshal all of their resources behind their chosen boxer, or they were going to lose.
That was a fight that's going to be a long time.
Okay. So, appreciate you hearing me out there, or hearing those two out. Okay. Now, I digress. Okay. Now, we need to make sure we're familiar with this. We understand this is Cold War. When the starting date is a moving target, depending on what you argue. But digress here. Now, again, reinforcing everything's connected. We look at this. I want you to jot what I'm going to talk about down. We look at this. What's this referred to? At least they know what this refers to. And we have some, don't say it out loud yet. If we look at this, what's some key words we can look up? Jordan? Treaty signed. Okay, so we're at the question. First question is, what treaty is this talking about? Is it the Brest-Litovsk Treaty? Maybe, we don't know yet. War over. Okay. What's some other things we can look up, Blake? The date. What is the date on this? 1919. So we have some kind of 1919, some kind of treaty signed in 1919. Got that down. Tyler. Paris. Okay, where's Paris at?
France?
It's in France. Very good. That's where the Eiffel Tower is. There's also a palace there.
That's in.
Let's make one. What other? Who's this guy? Who's Wilson? Wilson. You think Dennis the Menace, right? Wilson. Or you think of what was Sherlock Holmes' partner's name? That wasn't Wilson. That's Watson.
Watson.
Hey.
What about the little volleyball that
Castaway. Oh yeah, Castaway. Wilson. Okay. Who's Wilson? It's a question we'd ask. He's a volleyball. What other things, little subtitles we see up here that are probably, that we know who's involved? Him? It says city bells ring tidings as the peace treaty is signed.
Treaty severe.
Fleet joins in celebration. We have some kind of jubilance here. Everybody seems excited. Next one says, hey, guns boom, planes fill air. French crowds cheer peace. We got excitement, exuberance, the war is over. As Jordan said, treaty severe on who? Says Wilson, but imposes nothing she cannot do. Germans pledge to enforce treaty, no reservation. Wilson, starting for home. What's that say? Bids France Godspeed. Okay, so who is Wilson? Who's Wilson? Who's Wilson?
Who is it?
Leader
You tell us.
turned-
I don't remember. We're asking you the question.
Leader of who?
Germany.
It says
The leader of France.
Wilson starting for home. So that means he's not from France.
Oh, okay.
So it's a different country that was also.
Look him up! Who's Wilson?
Who is Wilson?
All
Is it
the
Woodwell?
That's gonna come up with something. 1919. Who is Wilson 19?
What treaty are we talking about here?
Yeah, I knew it was the treaty for Versailles.
Right here it is.
Versailles.
Versailles.
Versailles? Why is there two L's in it? Yes.
French. They never do anything right. Okay? So we have Treaty of
What's
Versailles.
the right then?
Treaty of Versailles. We have, okay, Treaty of Versailles. It says war over. We know it's signed in 1919. What war are we referring to? Okay, it officially ends World War I. Talking about this for a reason. I'm introducing you to something we haven't got to yet. We're going to get more depth when we get to it. But we have Wilson. Who's Wilson?
Woodrow Wilson.
Thomas.
Thomas Woodrow Wilson. Who was he in 1919?
President.
He was the president
I thought that.
of the United States. Woodrow Wilson. And he went over to Paris to make sure a treaty got underway here. Peace treaty. Official ending of World War I. But we know what about it according to the text.
Bad.
It's severe.
Severe.
It's harsh on Germany. Doesn't say the Germans are cheering, it says who's cheering. French. It doesn't say it's signed in Berlin, it's signed in Paris, which means the Germans have to pack and go to Paris and sign this bad boy, which means they probably lost. So things are severe on Germany. Now, talking about this, I'm going to give you the causation here. Causation. If we look here at this pipe, at this bar graph, what do we see here? What's the thing we can take away? Karen, what do you got? What's rising?
Unemployment.
Unemployment where? Okay, so looking at Germany. And we look at this bar graph.
Crash.
There should be some questions here we ask. We're looking 1928 to 32. This bar graph obviously looks at. When's there a big spike? Between 1931. Then we have to ask a question. Why this spike? We had to look at what's the context, what's going on in 1930-31. Jared. Great Depression has the world in a grip of economic hardship. And we look here. Something crashes right about here at the end of 1920s, 29, I'm sorry. At the 1929 October, what crashes? Stock market. And that's going to affect all the countries throughout the world. Okay? And we see a spike in unemployment. Now, who do you think is unhappy in 1931?
Everyone.
Where? Germany. Who gets blamed when there's economic hardships? The government. The government. Now, I want you guys to follow me here. I want you to follow me because everything's connected. Okay, we look up here. Unemployment in Germany. The Germans are blaming the government. And they're also blaming something that was signed about a decade earlier. This thing. What's this thing? The Treaty of Versailles. It's severe on Germany. It's going to cause economic hardship on Germany, which will eventually lead to this economic hardship being unemployment in Germany. They're going to blame their government. When you're unemployed, you're struggling to find food, struggling to work, struggling to find money, you're going to blame the government. Well, some dude is going to start promising, take my hand, I'll get you out of your poverty, I'll get you back on your feet, I'll get you a job. Many people are going to grab a hold of that hand. Who's that hand belong to? It's this dude, okay? The guy we know. So many historians argue, you guys listen, we make this connection to the Cold War. Many historians argue, if it wasn't for the Treaty of Versailles, the economic hardships on Germany, history never appears like this. It's the Treaty of Versailles that keeps it out. Think about the concept. It wasn't direct, it was indirect. But what's America learned from the end of World War I? When you defeat a country, don't kick it while it's down. Okay? Don't kick it while it's down, or it may just lead to another hit. Because when people are struggling to survive, they're willing to turn in. Even somebody they knew was somewhat sadistic before he took power. Okay? So we look at this. We see the Nazi Party come about as an indirect effect of the Treaty of Versailles. Most historians argue the Treaty of Versailles actually caused Hitler. Which then you say, oh my gosh, man, it led to Hitler. The Treaty of Versailles actually led to World War II. Right? It led to World War II. So we need to make sure we're conscious of that. Now, what if I told you World War II, it starts in September of 1939. Starts September 1939. What if I told you World War II would last until 1945? What if I told you in that dash, this is such a, they don't really know this number because it's millions, but they're estimating about 80 million people died. And it was mainly fought in Asia and Europe and parts of Africa, Northern Africa. Okay? So we see 80 million people killed. What if I told you, what if historians have found, okay, it could have all been avoided in 1938. It could have all been avoided in 1938. But something happens in this city in 1938 that many historians argue could have prevented World War II. And something happens in this city that's going to lead to the Cold War being a Cold War. Okay? And again, you can make an argument that what happened in 1938 in that city called Munich will be why there's a Cold War between the United States and the Soviets. Okay? Because it leads to something happening as a result. Now, Kyler, you're going to take us away with what happened in the Soviet.